Hi, I'm Renee. They called me a naive fool, my own fiancé, and my sister. They used my money, my plans, my name, then smiled while I stood in the background of my own wedding. But what they didn't know was that I recorded everything, the lies, the mockery, the betrayal. And when the music started, I didn't walk down the aisle. I walked them into the truth. But ask yourself, if your own family betrayed you this publicly, would you stay quiet? Or would you burn the whole illusion down? I've always been the one to step aside, the youngest daughter, the quiet one, the one who listened, who cleaned up without being asked, who remembered birthdays without needing reminders. I learned early that space was earned, not given, and it was always better to let others shine than to fight for the spotlight yourself. That's who I was when I met Darren. Or rather, who I was when I believed he truly saw me. He made me feel like I wasn't a backup plan, like I was the one being chosen for once, not the one left behind. It felt real enough that I stopped second-guessing, stopped questioning whether I was wanted or just convenient. People called us solid, stable, predictable, the couple who had it together. But things started slipping sideways during the engagement. Little comments from vendors, side glances from his family, and too many people, when they thought I wasn't listening, referred to the wedding as Lindsay's project. My sister, the golden child. Of course, I remember telling myself, love is about compromise. Maybe this is mine. The wine-tasting dinner was the first time both families came together. I'd hoped it would finally feel real. I should have known better. Beatrice, Darren's mother, stood to give a toast. She smiled, polished and tight like always, glass raised high. We're just so happy Darren found someone like Lindsay. Oh, Mirai, sorry. The table laughed. Except me. No one corrected her, not even Darren. He reached over, gave my hand a squeeze, then went right on smiling like nothing had happened. Lindsay sipped her champagne without blinking. That wasn't the first time someone called me by her name. Probably wouldn't be the last. But for some reason that night, it didn't slide off me. It stuck, like a splinter under the skin. I laughed too, because what else do you do when the joke's on you? But in the silence between the toasts, I felt it. A chill. Not of being excluded, but of being absorbed. Like I was being written over. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and stared at my engagement ring. It glittered. Expensive. Elegant. But I didn't feel chosen. I felt selected. Lindsay showed up the next morning with coffee in one hand and a garment bag in the other. You have to try this, she said, all smiles. I had it made a few years ago for, well, it never got used. It'll look amazing on you. I hesitated, but she pushed the bag into my arms. The boutique was filled with flattery. Beatrice clapped her hands. The assistant snapped photos. Darren said I looked classic. They all kept saying how perfect it was. Then Coraline, the staffer at the shop, said, "Oh, wow, it's still stunning. I remember when you brought it in for your big day, Lindsay." Nobody spoke. And that was it. Just silence. I stood there in front of the mirror, wearing the dress Lindsay had once planned to walk down the aisle in. I didn't ask questions. Didn't make a scene. I smiled. But inside, something tore. I wasn't wearing my dream, I told myself. I was wearing someone else's leftover hope. That night, we had dinner at Darren's parents' house, big oak table, wine flowing, everyone chatting. Lindsay took over the room again. Stories from her travels, photos from her brand deals, anecdotes about how she helped shape the vision of the wedding. Beatrice kept pointing out how Lindsay had such a refined eye, how everything about the wedding had her flair. Darren's uncle lifted his glass. To Lindsay's taste, Miray's. More laughter. I looked down at my plate. Arden, sitting across from me, texted under the table. You good? This feels weird. I typed back. Just nerves. I'm okay. But I wasn't. After dinner, I went for a walk alone, down by the water. The breeze was cool against my skin, but I welcomed it. I needed it. I thought about all the times I'd made room for others. The piano recital I gave up so Lindsay could have a second solo. The dress I said looked better on her. The boyfriend I never called out when he drifted toward her glow. I'd told myself that love meant letting others shine. But sitting there on that bench by the river, I felt it differently. Maybe love Real love is someone stepping forward with you, not watching you step back for them. Maybe love isn't supposed to feel like erasure. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally done being convenient. I looked at my ring again that night, under the lamplight in the hallway outside the guest room. It didn't feel like a promise anymore. It felt like a placeholder. The morning after the dinner, I stood in the kitchen with a half-drunk cup of coffee and a growing sense that nothing I chose was really mine. Darren was upstairs, still asleep. His mother, Beatrice, had already been up an hour, flipping through linen samples for the rehearsal table. She asked if I wanted to join them for the cake tasting later that day. I said yes, even though I hadn't slept a full night since the toast. I'd spent weeks building a vision board for the cake, simple whites, clean lines, no fondant roses. I wanted something light, seasonal, a little citrus to cut through the sugar. When we got to the bakery, though, the cake that greeted us looked like it had stepped out of Lindsay's Instagram. Soft pinks, dripping gold accents, edible pearls. "Oh my God," Beatrice said, clapping her hands like a debutante. "This is exactly what Lindsay showed last month. So elegant, timeless." I looked at Darren. He gave me that half smile, like he was hoping I wouldn't say anything, like he was silently asking me to go along with it, just this once. "This is what Lindsay would have picked too," Beatrice added, oblivious. "Classic never goes out of style." I wanted to speak, but the sugar already tasted sour, and I hadn't even had a bite yet. When we returned home, I found a small box waiting on the hall table, silver wrapping, no tag. Beatrice handed it to me with an expectant look. "From us," she said. "A little something to commemorate the countdown." I unwrapped it slowly while they all watched. A thin chain necklace. Silver. Delicate. The kind of thing you wear when you want to seem understated but important. I turned the pendant over in my palm. 2L. Forever in our hearts. Beatrice gasped. "Oh, that must have been a mix-up at the store." Lindsay smiled. She didn't even try to hide it. Darren chuckled. "We'll get it fixed. No big deal." But nobody moved to take it back. No one reached out to swap it. No one apologized again. I held it for a few seconds, then put it back in the box. Quietly. It wasn't the wrong name. It was the right name for the wrong woman. Later that night, I sat alone in our room and scrolled through the checklist on my phone. The wedding was 2 weeks away. We were past decisions now. We were in the execution phase. Of the 24 items on the list, only 2 had been mine. The photographer, the band. Everything else? The venue was Beatrice's cousin's estate. The cake was Lindsay's style. The color scheme, the centerpieces, the playlist. Lindsay had advised on all of it. Darren had nodded along to every suggestion. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's what they say, right? The cuts weren't deep, but they were daily. And I was bleeding in places nobody could see. The next morning, Arden texted me a screenshot from Lindsay's social media. The caption, "Cake tasting success." "It's all coming together," she added. "Cake looked pinker than you'd want." I stared at the photo. My cake. My wedding. "It's manageable," I typed back. She responded with a ... that hung for minutes. Then, "You don't have to manage everything." I didn't reply. I just closed the chat and put the phone face down. How long had I been performing my own silencing? How many times had I told myself it's fine when it clearly wasn't? Sometimes, when people keep ignoring you, you start preemptively disappearing. That afternoon, I visited the decor planner at the boutique to finalize details. I sat down and noticed Lindsay's Pinterest board open on the iPad. "Oh, don't worry," the planner said cheerily. "We know you're not too picky. Lindsay said you're cool with whatever. That really helps us." I paused, looked at the table filled with ribbon samples, candle heights, place setting styles. "Can we do something that feels like me?" That's what I said. Softly, but clearly. The room went silent. Then came the smile, tight, professional, but entirely dismissive. "Of course, Mirai. You'll be stunning, no matter what." The meeting ended 15 minutes later. I left without confirming anything. Walking out, I passed a mother and her daughter trying on flower girl dresses. The little girl asked, "Can I pick the pink one?" The mother smiled and said, "It's your day too, sweetheart." And I realized I hadn't heard those words once. I used to think being easygoing was a virtue. But maybe I just made it easy to be overlooked. I didn't need anyone to say I wasn't the bride. They just kept showing me. That night, I pulled out a box from my childhood, looking for a picture I hadn't seen in years. I didn't know why. I just needed something that belonged to me before all this, something that didn't smell like compromise or obligation. Dad was asleep in his recliner downstairs, TV humming low. The house still had her scent, faint in the old furniture and the quiet corners. I crept upstairs, barefoot like I used to when sneaking snacks past curfew. My old room hadn't changed much, same faded quilt, same posters taped crookedly to the wall. I opened the closet, slid aside the old sweater bags, and pulled out the plastic tub labeled M, College Keepsakes. I dug through photo booth strips, dried prom corsages, a cracked snow globe from senior year. At the bottom, tucked into the back of an old journal, was an envelope with my mother's handwriting on it. For later, when you doubt your worth. I didn't sit. I didn't hesitate. I opened it and read. Her voice came back in those words, clear and steady. "You've always been the one who steps back so others can shine, but even the moon deserves her full phase." She wrote about watching me disappear in 1,000 small ways, handing over the last slice, nodding when I wanted to speak, choosing silence to keep the peace. How I made people comfortable by making myself small. Don't marry a man who sees you as a placeholder. Don't build a life out of someone else's leftovers. Her handwriting shook near the bottom. You deserve to be a choice, even when it's hard. I read the letter twice, then a third time. I didn't cry. I just breathed deeper than I had in weeks, folded the paper, held it tight. "I should have read this sooner," I whispered. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table back in Annapolis, coffee cooling in my hands. I thought about the rooms I'd been put in, the seats I'd been handed. Lindsay always got the corner office, metaphorically speaking. I got the hallway. It wasn't just Darren. It was every man, every friend, every situation where I chose not to cause trouble, hoping that would be enough to earn peace. But peace built on silence never holds. I wasn't even mad at them anymore. Not really. I was mad at myself. They didn't build a trap. I just walked in and never locked the damn door behind me. So I made a new list. Not the wedding list. A different one. What was I going to choose, truly actively choose, for myself? That afternoon, Darren called while I was walking through the park, letter folded in my coat pocket. "Where have you been? Your phone's been off." "I needed some air," I said. "Just thinking." He laughed. "Still nervous about the big day?" I paused, then said, "Not nervous, just making sure it's still my day." He said something after that. I don't remember what. Something hollow. That night I placed the letter in my wallet, not as a keepsake, as a weapon, as armor. Later that week, Arden and I met for coffee. She looked at me with those guarded eyes, the ones that said she wanted to speak but didn't know where to begin. "I know you're under a lot of stress." I sipped slowly, then nodded. "You can say it," I told her. "Say what you're seeing. I won't break." She sighed, finally letting it out. "I don't know what Darren and Lindsay are doing exactly. But I know this. None of this feels right. And you deserve better." It hit me like a gust of clean air. I leaned back and nodded again. "I've been trying to earn a place in my own life," I said. "That ends today." I didn't need to explain how. I just knew what came next wouldn't be polite. I wasn't planning my wedding anymore. I was planning my return. I didn't expect the voice message to come through just after midnight. I was lying there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan. Darren was next to me, breathing deep, arm draped lazily across my waist like a man who had nothing to fear, nothing to hide. His phone buzzed. He didn't move. It lit up the nightstand. I glanced at it without meaning to. Calendar alert. Timeline prep. Zoom recording. I didn't want to care. Didn't want to go looking for something that would hurt. But my thumb moved anyway. Unlocked the phone. Opened the notification. There it was. Just a media file. No name, no subject. I pressed play. Lindsay's voice came first. Crisp. confident, too loud for that time of night. She really thinks this is her fairy tale. A pause. Then Darren's voice, low, like a smirk in audio form. God, she's so easy to manage. Laughter. Lindsay again. She's always been good at filling in the background anyway. I froze, completely still. I didn't even blink. They were talking about me, not indirectly, not in frustration or stress or exhaustion. They were mocking me, laughing, like I was a running joke in a group chat I never knew existed. I paused the recording, sat there in the dark, heart not racing, not panicking, just still. This wasn't stress. This wasn't miscommunication. This was betrayal. I replayed the same 10 seconds twice, just to be sure I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't. I looked at Darren sleeping next to me. Peaceful. Like a man who'd already made peace with his choices. They don't think I'll ever leave, I whispered, not even meaning to say it aloud. And why would they? I never had. The next morning, before the sun came up, I sat on the edge of the bathtub and called Arden. She answered on the second ring. I need to ask you something, I said, keeping my voice steady. Did you know they talk about me like this? Silence. Then a breath. I've seen things, she said. Nothing I could prove. But enough. I just didn't know how to tell you. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. Thank you, I said, for not lying. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I told her, but I'm done hoping they'll stop. I don't need closure from them, I said. I need clarity for myself. After we hung up, I copied the file to my laptop, created a folder, named it Exit Strategy. Then I got to work. I pulled receipts, bank statements, screenshots of emails where I'd been looped in late, or not at all. Copies of invoices for vendors I never chose but somehow paid for. I reviewed the guest list, highlighted the names of people who deserved the truth. I called the venue, asked if I could do a run-through of the tech setup for the reception slideshow. I told them I'd bring my own file. They said sure, no problem. I hung up and sat back in my chair. They thought I was naive. No, worse than that, they thought I was harmless. But the fool is always the one they don't see coming. The next afternoon, Darren texted me, asking if I wanted to join him for his final tuxedo fitting. I said yes. We met at the shop. He looked pleased to see me, relieved maybe, as if my presence meant everything was still under control. You okay? He asked. I'm better than I've been in weeks. He smiled and kissed my forehead. I let him. I wasn't pretending anymore. That night, during dinner with his family, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen under the table. Text from Beatrice. Can we talk? Something's not sitting right. She wanted to talk, but I already knew what she'd say, and more importantly, what she wouldn't. The real unraveling didn't start with the recording. It started when the money disappeared. That morning, I sat at the kitchen table in my apartment, hair still wet from the shower, laptop open in front of me. I was double-checking final vendor payments before the next round of deposits hit. Just routine, until it wasn't. I opened our joint wedding account, where I'd deposited nearly $30,000 over the last 6 months, and blinked. Balance, $378.21. I stared at the screen. Hit refresh. Same number. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe the bank app had desynced. I logged in again, this time through the desktop. Same result. Then I checked the transaction history. That's when my stomach dropped. Dozens of transfers, small at first, then bigger. Consultation. Creative fee. Campaign prep. The amounts added up fast, and every last one of them had been routed to a business account under Darren's name, co-owned by Lindsay. I didn't scream. Didn't slam the laptop shut. I just sat there. This wasn't a mistake. This was a partnership, just not the one I was supposed to be part of. By mid-morning, I was at the bank, sitting across from a branch manager who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I explained the situation, calmly, clearly, without raising my voice. She tapped her keyboard, then looked back at me and said the words I already knew were coming. Because Mr. Stokes is listed as a co-signer, these withdrawals aren't considered unauthorized. Legally, nothing had been stolen. Morally, that was a different story. Outside, I sat in my car with the engine off, clutching the printout of transaction logs like they were courtroom evidence. Maybe they were, just not for court. When you give people permission out of love, I muttered to no one, and they use it like a weapon, that's not theft. That's betrayal with receipts. I didn't call Darren, didn't text Lindsay, didn't ask for an explanation. I forwarded everything, PDFs, screenshots, account histories, to my backup email labeled Exit Strategy. Then I put my phone face down and went back upstairs. That night, I invited Arden over. I didn't tell her why. We sat on the balcony with 2 glasses of wine and the city buzzing quietly beneath us. So, I said, swirling the glass, you know about Lindsay and Darren's little business partnership? She froze mid-sip. Her eyes darted, then she put the glass down carefully. I wasn't sure how deep it went, she said. But you knew it existed, I said. A beat passed. She didn't deny it. I didn't want to believe it, she said. But yeah, I knew. I nodded slowly. And now? Now, she said, I think you were the only one who didn't know. I let that sit between us. Heavy, final, and true. Narration bubbled up in my chest. I had made it easy for them to keep me in the dark. They didn't even have to lie well. Alone again, I found myself staring at the checklist I'd taped to my vanity mirror. Things to finalize before the big day. Florist, caterer, playlist. I crossed out each one by one, then added one line at the bottom. Me. They didn't lie to me, I whispered. Not fully. I lied to myself every time I smiled and stayed silent. A memory flickered. A dinner, weeks back. Darren had joked to his cousin, Mirai's the practical one. That's why she handles the books. Lindsay laughed. Because she keeps the receipts. Back then, I'd smiled, thought it was some twisted version of endearment. Now, it felt like prophecy. They never hid who they were. I just kept hoping they'd become someone else. The next morning, I didn't check email or call vendors. I called the wedding coordinator. Hi, I said. I'd like to run a different slideshow format, privately, just to test the screen resolution. She didn't question it, just booked me in. Then I called my bank. Froze every shared account, moved every dollar into a new private savings account, changed every password, requested new contract copies from each vendor, under my name only. You don't have to scream to be loud, I reminded myself. You don't have to fight to be finished. I sat down at the kitchen table again, same spot where I'd first noticed the balance. And that's when my phone buzzed. A text from Lindsay. Private pre-wedding brunch at my place tomorrow. Girls only, 11 a.m. Hope you can make it. I stared at the screen. Was it a celebration or a performance? Either way, I wasn't showing up empty-handed. The air at Lindsay's brunch was thick with mimosas, money, and malice. I arrived 5 minutes early, still somehow the last to walk in. Every seat was taken except one, of course. The one next to Beatrice, not Darren, not Lindsay, just the spot farthest from the head of the table and closest to the catering staff. I sat quietly, smiled politely, and listened. Listened while they praised Lindsay for her vision, her grace under pressure, her unmatched sense of style. You girls really know how to throw something together, one of Darren's aunts said, raising her glass. It's like watching a magazine come to life. Lindsay beamed. The photographer, yes, they hired a photographer for brunch, hovered just behind her shoulder, snapping candids like it was a Vogue feature. Darren stood to say a few words. He cleared his throat, smiled that polished, politics-ready smile, and said, I couldn't have pulled this all together without the help of 2 incredible women. He looked at Beatrice, then Lindsay. They've shaped me into the man I am today. Everyone clapped. No one toasted me. No one mentioned my name. I wasn't the bride. I was the tolerated plus one in my own story. Halfway through the main course, I excused myself, said I needed to freshen up. Arden caught my eye on the way out and followed. We didn't speak in the hallway. She just pulled out her phone, unlocked it, and handed it to me. One photo. Darren and Lindsay. At the venue walkthrough. Her hand under the table, on his knee. His smile wasn't professional. It wasn't brotherly. It was the kind of smile that belongs to someone who knows what they're getting away with. I gave the phone back. I didn't want to believe it either, Arden whispered. I nodded. Then walked to the restroom, locked the door behind me, and looked at myself in the mirror. Still not crying, still not cracking. I wasn't confused anymore. I was choosing when to end the game. Back at the table, Beatrice leaned in, conspiratorial and sweet, the way women do when they're about to say something cruel and call it concern. You know, she said, cutting into her fruit salad, Lindsay helped us review the prenup. You're lucky to have such a supportive sister. I tilted my head. Prenup? She nodded. It's just a formality, of course. Darren has responsibilities, you understand. I smiled. Of course, no one wants the wrong person walking away with everything. She patted my hand. I resisted the urge to pull away. Funny how people assume you won't understand just because you haven't said anything yet. I left before dessert. Told them I had to check on a final vendor. No drama, no raised voices, just a polite smile and a quiet goodbye. 2 blocks away, I stepped into my attorney's office. I handed over a folder, banking statements, the prenup draft, the audio recordings, the photo from Arden. I spoke clearly. I want revisions, I want ownership clarified, and I want a clause added. The paralegal raised an eyebrow. Any undisclosed financial collaboration between parties involved will nullify the agreement, I said. She nodded. Wrote it down. They wanted to play games. I'd bring the rules, and the referee. Back home, I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. Deleted the exit strategy folder. Created a new one. Showtime. I opened a second browser, set up a new private email. Uploaded every file, photos, PDFs, audio clips, to cloud storage. Then I opened my notes app and typed one line. They buried me. They didn't know I was a seed. That night, as I reorganized wedding documents and renamed vendor contacts, my phone buzzed. Text from Darren. Big night tomorrow. Can't wait to make it official. He had no idea just how official things were about to get, for all of us. I didn't plan to start the war at the rehearsal dinner, but sometimes silence isn't power. Action is. I arrived a few minutes early, still ended up being the last to walk in. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. Either way, the only open seat was at the far end of the table. Again. Darren and Lindsay sat near the center, laughing with his coworkers. Beatrice was mid-toast when I slid into my seat. She didn't look up. The table shimmered with crystal and florals, but all I could see was the seating chart. How perfect it was. How perfectly I had been placed at the edge of everything. Then Darren stood. He raised his glass and thanked everyone who helped bring this dream together. He called it a collective vision. Wouldn't have happened without the incredible women who guided this process, he said. He looked at Lindsay. The words that followed were mine, direct lines from my original wedding planning document, colors, pacing, menu pairings. The whole mood board. He read it like a script. They didn't even bother changing it. They assumed I wouldn't know my own words. Earlier that day, I'd found my exact plan, lifted and posted on Lindsay's blog, titled Sisterly Wedding Magic. Not a single mention of my name. I smiled through the speech, sipped my wine, didn't clap. I didn't have to. That morning, before I even zipped up my dress, I'd received an email. No sender, no subject, just a forward chain titled, Miri, the safety net. I read it 3 times before saying a word. Darren had written to Lindsay. She's the stable one. She'll pay for it all because she wants the fairy tale. We'll let her. And Lindsay's reply, let her play bride. We'll handle the business. I didn't cry. I forwarded it to myself, saved it to my folder, replied to the anonymous sender with one word. Noted. It's one thing to be used. It's another to be written off like garbage. In writing. During dinner, Beatrice raised her glass to Lindsay's coordination, calling her effortless under pressure. Darren nodded proudly. No one even glanced my way. I sipped water, calm, composed. Arden mouthed, "You okay?" from across the table. I nodded. Darren reached for my hand when a photographer passed by. We posed. He smiled. I matched it. 10 minutes later, I deleted the photo from my phone. I watched Darren speak to one of his friends across the table. He laughed, animated, rehearsed. I wasn't marrying a man. I was marrying a brand. After dessert, I found the venue coordinator and pulled her aside discreetly. I need to confirm something about tomorrow's presentation, I said. She blinked. Of course. I handed her a USB drive. Use this. No substitutions, no previews. She hesitated for half a second, then nodded. I signed a release form on the spot. Walking back toward the table, I paused behind Beatrice's chair. She was chatting with Lindsay, who didn't even glance at me. I slid a folded note under Beatrice's coffee saucer, just in case you want to know who's really paying for tomorrow. Then I walked out. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is leave before you're asked to. Back home, I kicked off my heels and sat in silence for a long time. No music, no TV, just me, the hum of the fridge, and a knowing that felt both cold and steady. I opened the first voice memo Darren ever sent me after he proposed. You've always been the safe one, Mirai. You make me feel like I don't have to try so hard. I'd saved it. At the time, I thought it meant I was home to him, that he felt peace in me. But now I knew what it really meant. He didn't propose because I was special. He proposed because I was easy. I pulled out the letter from my mother again, the same one I'd been keeping in my wallet. One line stood out. Don't become small just to fit into someone else's frame. I read it again, then looked at the USB. Everything was ready. The emails, the recordings, the photos, the receipts, all cued and labeled. I checked it twice, set my alarm early, and whispered, "Let's give them a wedding to remember." The music played, the guests clapped, and for the first 5 minutes, everything was beautiful. I arrived at the venue in a dress no one expected. Simple, crisp, my choice. Not the blush satin Lindsay insisted would tie the aesthetic together. This was ivory, clean, sharp, like truth. Darren met me at the entrance, flashing that rehearsed smile I'd come to know too well. He kissed my cheek like a politician shaking hands before a press conference. "You look stunning," he said. "Thanks," I replied, walking past him toward the aisle. Lindsay floated through the garden in soft pink, her curls pinned just so. She glided between guests like she owned the place. Maybe she thought she did. Beatrice stopped me just before I took my place. "You look elegant, Mirai." Classic. Not warm, not affectionate, just classic. They got their picture-perfect wedding. The music, the chairs, the flowers, all arranged exactly as the plan demanded. Their plan. I stood through the ceremony, smiling, nodding, repeating lines we'd rehearsed, vows spoken with precision but no weight. Darren held my hands like he was anchoring a campaign promise. I let him, because they wanted a wedding, and I gave them the illusion. The reception hall buzzed with low lights and soft jazz. Glasses clinked. Laughter rolled through the air. The MC tapped his mic. "We've got a special surprise for everyone tonight. A little something from our beautiful bride." The projector screen lit up. People turned their chairs. The music faded out. And then, silence. Not baby photos. Not our first vacation selfie. Not a slow-motion montage of Darren proposing at sunset. The first clip was audio. Darren's voice. "She's stable, predictable. She'll pay. Let her." The room didn't move. Then Lindsay. "Let her wear the dress. We'll run the show." Gasps. Actual gasps. Then the images. Bank statements. Photo of Darren and Lindsay holding hands at the venue. An annotated prenup quote. Slide after slide. I stood off to the side, calm, watching it like I wasn't in it, because I wasn't. The final image stayed longer than the rest. Me, smiling in a sunlit photo from last year, captioned, "This was the day I stopped pretending." No music, just a slow fade to black. Then lights up, no applause, just murmurs, shuffling, chairs creaking. Someone dropped a fork. Beatrice stood abruptly. Darren didn't move. His face was frozen. Lindsay disappeared into the hallway. Then Darren approached me. "What the hell did you just do?" he hissed. I tilted my head. Calm. I told the truth. He stepped closer. You embarrassed me. No, I said. You did that to yourself. He opened his mouth, but I was already walking. Arden followed me. She didn't say anything, just squeezed my hand once as we reached the door. They orchestrated an event. I delivered a reckoning. I didn't stay for cake, or toasts, or the fallout. I handed a sealed envelope to the coordinator on my way out. She looked surprised. For Darren, I said. You can give it to him when things settle. Inside, annulment papers, and my mother's letter. I slipped off my heels outside and walked barefoot to the bench by the river, the one where I used to imagine my wedding day. It wasn't the wedding I dreamed of, I whispered, but it was the ending I needed. Later at home, I opened my childhood journal and placed a folded letter inside. Not from my mother, from me. To the girl who thinks staying silent will keep the peace, you're not the problem. You're just the one they assumed wouldn't fight back. I slid a flash drive into the back pocket of the cover. Just in case I ever forgot what I survived, I closed the journal, locked the drawer, sat back, and then my phone lit up. Unknown number. One text. You think this is over? I didn't flinch at the message, because I had already decided how this story would end. Not all endings are about justice. Some are about choosing not to be haunted. It's been 3 weeks. I live in a small apartment now, on the 4th floor of a quiet building in downtown Baltimore. The windows are wide, the light is honest. There are no wedding photos, no framed smiles, no souvenirs of a life that almost was. The boxes are finally unpacked. Not because I rushed to settle, but because the weight of leaving behind a version of yourself is lighter when you know you'll never need it again. I water my plants in the morning. I make my own coffee. I write emails to clients, freelance projects slowly filling my schedule. You don't start over all at once, I wrote in my journal last night. You start over each morning, you choose not to look back. It's true. I don't hear from anyone on Darren's side, not even Beatrice, except that one voicemail that came late. The night after everything blew up, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. Then I listened. It was Lindsay. Her voice was cracked, rushed. You think you won, she said, but you ruined everything. Was that really your mother's voice in your head? Or yours? I saved the message. For a while. But I never responded. Never intended to. Because guilt is what they send you when manipulation stops working. And I returned it unopened. Last night, I deleted it. Did it free me? Not completely, but it gave me the first full night of sleep I'd had in weeks. Some things don't need closure, just distance. Word got around. Darren's firm started an internal audit. I never said a word, but someone did. Lindsay pulled her wedding blog offline, citing privacy concerns. She went radio silent. They wanted an empire built on silence. I just stopped being part of it. I didn't make announcements. I didn't gloat. I let the truth stand on its own. Some truths don't need to be screamed. They echo without help. Arden came by with breakfast last Sunday. Croissants, coffee, tulips from a farmer's market. We didn't talk about what happened. We didn't need to. She smiled. You didn't just walk away. I nodded. I took myself with me. That was the difference. Yesterday, I went to a small art exhibit not far from my building. A community gallery, local artists, quiet space. There was a sculpture in the center of the room. A swan, abstract, twisted. The neck bent, almost broken, but still upright, still standing. I stared at it for a long time. They gave me the napkin swan, I thought. They folded it for me. This time, I'll make my own. I bought a blank card from the gift shop, wrote something inside, my own words, but echoing hers. You don't owe the world your silence to keep it comfortable. I slid it into my wallet, right where my mother's letter used to be. This one wasn't inherited, it was claimed. That night I sat at my desk, writing in my journal. Soft jazz played from the old Bluetooth speaker I kept meaning to replace. There was a knock. I opened the door. A man stood there, holding a package with my name on it. Wrong unit, he said, grinning. Moved in last month, across the hall. He was an artist. Asked if I liked the gallery on Franklin. We talked for 2 minutes, maybe 3. Before he left, I said, "If you ever want to borrow a plant or a book, knock again." He smiled. After he left, I sat back down, opened my laptop to finish an invoice, and saw the email. Subject line, "Podcast inquiry, your story at the wedding." I didn't delete it. Didn't open it either. I just let it sit there. Maybe. I didn't need revenge. I needed release. And this time, I gave that to myself.